Well, we are looking at this message today, and I believe it's going to minister to all the dads in here. I also believe it's going to minister to everybody in here that's not a dad. That would include everybody else who was sitting while the dads were standing. Because here's the reality of it. All of us can feel at one time or another that we have failed. As a dad, as a husband, I often feel that way. I got to pray, Lord, help me to be a better dad. Help me to be a better husband. Help me to be a better pastor. I've got all these areas where I just see failure. Does anybody else ever feel that way? How about are there any men in here who've ever felt that you have failed in any area of your life? Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Is there anybody else, any women in here that have ever felt you have failed? Praise the Lord. See, this message is really for everybody. Even though it's Father's Day, it really is, but it's going to be specifically addressing anybody who has felt that they have failed, wondered if God could forgive them, or if God could love them, or if God would love them, or perhaps there was no hope because you messed up so bad. We can get there. But I want to tell you, if you feel that way and you're thinking, God won't take me back, then you have underestimated how great of a God that we have. I'm going to tell you this. God loves you. You got life. There is hope. God loves you, and God forgives the worst of us. This is so good. No matter how bad we have messed up. If you are here thinking God can't take me back, you're wrong. You've underestimated God. Let me illustrate this for you from Legos. You're all familiar with Legos. So Legos were invented by Kirk Christensen, and when he invented them, I'm certain he had no idea what Legos would become. A major motion picture about Legos, TV programs about Legos, internet games with Legos, amusement parks with Legos. Currently, with Legos, there are 20 billion Legos made every single year. That is a lot of Legos. I try to throw away my son's Legos. He doesn't even play with them anymore, but if I just touch them, I'm in trouble. Don't touch them, I built that. At a convention some time ago, it was an entrepreneur convention. Legos were represented there, and the young man who was representing Legos at the convention, he had 6 Legos. And he had, whoever was standing around him, he gave him 6 Legos. And he said, I want you to do this. Estimate how many different combinations you can create with these 6 Legos. Okay? So, myself, when I heard of this, I estimated 6 times 6. That makes sense, right? 36, right? How many would you estimate? 36? How about you, sir, with the glasses, staring at me? 30 different combinations. What do you think? 24? I don't know is not an answer. That's right. One more guess. Anybody? 6,000. 6,000. 100,000. Who said 100,000? Oh, 100. You would have been closer to 100,000. But still way off. My 36 was way off. You ready for this? Are you guys sitting down? Oh, you are sitting down. Okay, listen to this. 6 Legos have, you ready? 915,103,765 possible combinations from 6 Legos. My 36 was way off. I have severely, as many of you have, or all of you, severely underestimated what you can do with those Legos. Here's the problem. We often underestimate whether or not God can forgive us. And we also underestimate his love for us, and we underestimate his willingness to forgive us. And we can be, and usually are, way, way, way off. For God so loved the world that he gave his Son, and his combinations don't stop at 915 million. It's infinite. His love for us is great. So this is where we're going. Enter in the Apostle Peter. I have no doubt where we pick up the passage today, we're in a place where Peter is thinking, he's underestimated the love of God, and he's thinking there's no hope for him. Remember when we were in the Gospel of Matthew, and this is how you make the book go further into the future if you're Pastor Tom. You just turn to another Gospel and talk about Matthew, so that's what I'm doing. But when we were in the Gospel of Matthew, I had mentioned with Peter had denied the Lord 3 times. Remember that? I do not know you, I do not know you, I do not know you. And then the rooster crowed at the end of the 3rd time, just as Jesus said, Peter, you will deny me 3 times before the rooster crows even once. It happened. It was the night Jesus was betrayed. He's being tortured. He's being interrogated. He's being beaten. And he denies the Lord 3 times. And the rooster crows. And Peter went out and he wept bitterly. That was when Peter was warming himself at the enemy's fire. When we pick up the passage today, we are in this place where there's another fire, but this time it's a friendly fire. It's just a few days later. Jesus is crucified on Friday. He rises from the grave on Sunday. And somewhere shortly after he rose, we don't know exactly when, Jesus is on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. He has built a barbecue on the Sea of Galilee. And I bet it was a good barbecue. Could you imagine Jesus being your personal chef? I'm thinking it would be pretty good. Even if you don't like fish, it would probably be pretty good. So he's got the barbecue going. He's on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. The disciples had been up all night fishing. They caught nothing. Jesus said, throw the net onto the other side of the boat. When they did, they caught so much fish that the net began to tear. They brought in the fish. And so they've got this great fish barbecue that is going on. And that's where we pick up this passage. They're sitting around. They're eating. They're enjoying the conversation with Jesus. I'm sure they're all shocked at this point that Jesus has resurrected from the grave. And Peter is there. Not all of the disciples are there. I think about 7 of them are there, maybe 8. And Peter is there. The last time Jesus and Peter, they saw each other was when he denied the Lord. He's at the enemy's fire. The next time Peter and Jesus meet, it's at this fire that Jesus had made. It's a friendly fire. Peter had gone back to fishing. He had gone back to his old way of life. He thought, there's no hope for me. I've blown it. Jesus is dead. Whatever. I have no doubt that he doubted his own faithfulness. He doubted his ability to walk with Christ. Wondered if he could ever be used again. Wondered if the Lord could ever love him. So we pick up there. They're there. They're having the barbecue. Chapter 21, verse 15. So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus says to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? And Peter said to Jesus, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him again the second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him the 3rd time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Look at this. Peter was grieved because he said to him the 3rd time, do you love me? He said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. That's all the verses we're reading today, and it's a pretty impactful place. So notice the first thing here. It's number 1, is Peter is reminded of his failure. I will say this, that being reminded of your failure is a really miserable thing, right? It might be something that triggers, you see a picture of something that triggers your life before you came to Christ. It triggers how much of a failure you were in the spiritual things, and you realize, I don't want to go back there. Peter had gone back there. And Jesus is reminding him, Peter, you had a major failure without even using the word failure. But Jesus is doing something. It's been said you can't have a comeback without a setback, right? So Jesus is setting Peter back, reminding him of the way he used to be, reminding him of his failure because Peter is about ready to have a great and incredible comeback, even better than he ever was before. So how does Jesus remind Peter of his failure in this text? Notice verse 15, verse 16, verse 17, what Jesus does. He looks at him, and what's he call him? Simon, verse 15. Simon, verse 16. Simon, verse 17. Well, why is that significant? Simon was his old name, his BC name, his before Christ name. Remember that? When Jesus called Simon to follow him, he said this. Jesus looked at him and he said, John chapter 1, "You are Simon, the son of Jonah. You shall be called Cephas, or Peter," which is translated a stone or a rock. You are Simon from now on. You are a rock. You're awesome. You're solid. I imagine all of his other friends were sitting there around listening to Jesus say, "You're a rock." They must have been laughing. You mean foot and mouth Peter? The only time he takes his foot out of his mouth is to insert the other foot? That guy? Simon? You're saying he's a rock? His name used to be Simon. Jesus changed it to Peter, or rock. 3 times here. Simon, Simon, Simon. Marcia, Marcia, Marcia. Kind of like that. Simon, Simon, Simon. Peter was anything but a rock. You think back to his denial of the Lord. He's there. The night Jesus is betrayed, he's warming himself by the enemy's fire. He's asked the questions. Aren't you one of that man, Jesus? Aren't you one of his followers? I am not. I don't even know him. The question came a second time. I do not know the man. The question came a third time. I do not know him. And we're told the third time he did it with cursing and swearing. I do not know the man. The rooster crowed. At the moment the rooster crowed, at the moment of Peter's third denial, the Lord is walked past Peter from the place where he is being tortured and interrogated on his way to be crucified. He's being walked past Peter, carried past Peter. Peter's warming himself by the enemy's fire. He denies the Lord, and the Bible tells us that the Lord's eyes looked at Peter's eyes, stared into his soul. Peter went out and wept bitterly. So by calling him Simon, Jesus reminded Peter of his BC days, before Christ's days. He calls him by his former name because he is acting like his former self. The words of Jesus, listen to this, they were intended to hurt. Does that sound cruel? They were intended to hurt. Why? Because Jesus is restoring Peter, and this is part of the spiritual healing that Peter needs to go through in order to get past his failure. So with the name Simon, Jesus takes Peter back to the start of their relationship, and he's got to rebuild the foundation because it's messed up. The concrete wasn't hard enough. It's all broken apart. Peter, we're going to start over. You're Simon. You're acting like you used to. Let's fix this thing. Back to the foundation. When I was going through this, I was reminded of John Wooden. Some of you remember who Coach John Wooden was, coach of the UCLA Bruins. Coached the UCLA Bruins basketball to 10 championships in 12 years. That is quite remarkable. In fact, because of him, UCLA is still thought of as being a powerhouse in basketball, although they're nothing like they used to be. But Coach Wooden, he got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor at the time, to come and play for him. He's a freshman going into college. Bill Walton comes to play for John Wooden. Bill Walton thinks he's awesome. These guys are enormous guys. We're the best in the whole country. We can beat anybody. They're freshmen coming in to play at UCLA. You know what John Wooden told them to do? First day, first year. Gentlemen, this is how you put on your socks. Gentlemen, this is how you tie your shoes. And that is how he started his training camp every single year, no matter how great the man thought he was as a basketball player. Let's go back to the foundation. I love that. We forget about our foundation. Peter needed that foundation to be made strong, and that is exactly what Jesus was doing with him. But let me ask you this before we move on. Are there any failures, any mistakes, any sins, any regrets, any hurts, any wounds that you feel disqualify you not only from serving the Lord, but disqualify you from even being loved by Him? Are there things going on in your life right now that, quite frankly, you know you need to stop? You know who you are if you're in that camp. Then Jesus is this simple. Jesus is saying, stop it. Let's build a new foundation. Let's build the right foundation. Let's make this foundation strong. Simon, 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 do you love me? Jesus, I believe He's going to use His word, just these 3 verses today, to minister to anybody who's willing. This comes down to who's willing. God is willing. We underestimate the value of God's, or the amount of God's love. We underestimate how much He loves us, His ability. We underestimate all these things. Oh, He's more than willing. Our biggest problem is ourself, whether or not I am willing to say, Lord, I need you. I want help. I want victory. Whether or not I commit, this needs to stop. Does it make sense? If you're willing, He's doing that work right now. If you fall into that camp, right now He's doing it. Number 2, just 2 main points today. It is Father's Day, so I got to cut it short, you know. Well, that's not going to happen. But number 2, Peter's question about his love. Note that 3 times Jesus asked the same question, one for each time that Peter denied Him. Peter denied the Lord 3 times. Jesus asked him a question 3 times. First question, do you love me more than these? Verse 15, look at it again. So when they had eaten breakfast, a barbecue with Jesus, Jesus says to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? He said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus says to him, feed my lambs. So note that these isn't identified. Do you love me more than these? So what could these mean? It could mean any of these things. John MacArthur notes that it could mean, do you love me more than these boats, more than these nets, more than all of the fishing paraphernalia? That would certainly cut to the heart. What is it, Peter? Do you love the barbecue with your friends? We know Peter loved boating. We know he loved fishing. After he denied the Lord and the Lord was dead, Peter is the one who says, hey, anybody want to go back to the things we used to do? Let's go back fishing again. We know he went right back to his old self. There's no hope. I might as well just give up on this Jesus stuff. No doubt Peter was quite shocked, thinking Jesus is dead. He's gone back to his former life, and now he sees Jesus there on the shore barbecuing, and you hear he's talking to him. Oh, boy. But what could these be? It could be anything that Jesus is talking about, as John MacArthur notes. We can relate if we're honest with ourselves. We're challenged with similar things. Do you love me more than the beach? Do you love to worship me? Is it Disneyland you love more? Right? A job, vacations, bank accounts. Your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, your boat, your fishing, your eating, your sports, going to the desert. Do you love me more than these? When I was young, I was raised Catholic, as most of you know. Many of you are Catholic background also. And you know, when I went to church, well, when I was young, I went to church because my mom and dad said, you're going to church. So, but when I got older and left the house, I still went to church. The reason I went to church is because being Catholic, I was afraid that, you know, if you're Catholic, you don't go to church, you're going to hell. I mean, I don't even think there's a chance of purgatory. So I wanted to make sure I was at least going to get halfway to heaven. So with all the bad stuff I was doing, I would still go to church, at least make it into purgatory, right? And then I get saved some years later. And then I go to church because I love Jesus, because he loves me and he saved me from the person I was. Right? It's that place that he brings us to. And so here Jesus is saying to Peter, do you love me more than these, whatever these may be, is Jesus first, right? But these with Peter could also mean these other disciples. With Peter, all these things make sense. He loved boating, he loved fishing, but Peter had previously boasted of how much he loved the Lord. It was on the night when Jesus was betrayed. Judas had already left the building. They had the Last Supper, and Jesus says, all of you are going to be made to stumble because of me on this night. I'm going to be arrested. You're going to be made to stumble. Peter's reply to Jesus was this: even if all are made to stumble, in other words, even if all of the other disciples are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble. Lord, even if these other knuckleheads mess up, listen, you can count on me. I am not like those other men. I am different from them, right? 2 verses later, Peter went on to say, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. But yet, not only was Peter unwilling to die for the Lord, he was the only one that denied the Lord. So here Jesus says, do you love me more than these? That would be shocking. I believe it would be hurt. I believe at this point, all you have to do is imagine the scene. They're sitting there on the beach. From what we can tell, Peter's called out by Jesus in front of all of his friends. That would be most unpleasant. Especially since he just previously, a few days previously, offended all of his friends by saying, they'll mess up, but I won't mess up. I imagine all of them were sitting there thinking, yeah, I'm going to punch Peter right now. But here we are. They're probably thinking, oh, yeah, Peter's getting his. This is good. This is good. Yeah, preach it, Jesus. Preach it. Let Peter have it. Things are not going well for Peter at this point. Does it make sense? He's been called out by Jesus. Maybe he walked Peter over to the side, over here. Hey, Peter, you really messed up. Do you love me? I don't think it happened like that. The Bible doesn't say it happened like that. Even if it did, these are men, they would have been, oh, yeah, this is good. Oh, yeah, Peter's in so much trouble right now. This is great. Second time, Simon, do you love me? That was merciful because when he said the first time, do you love me more than these, that did the work in Peter. More than these other guys, more than the boats, more than the fishermen. Peter, do you love me more than these? That work was already done. Now he just has to say, do you love me, Peter? Not more than these, just do you love me? Third time, verse 17. Simon, do you love me? 3 times Peter denied Christ. 3 times Jesus asked Peter the same question. Verse 17 tells us Peter was grieved because he said to him the 3rd time, do you love me? That word for grieved comes from this Greek word. It means very heavy, very sad. He was, wow. He's humbled. He's embarrassed. Jesus calls him out. Listen, this would be a very, very unpleasant place to be. Have you ever been that embarrassed before? Not pleasant. Notice with these questions of Jesus, first off, the questions were calculated to hurt. Does that seem cruel? Understand, if Jesus didn't confront and challenge Peter, Peter would have going through the rest of his life with the guilt, with the embarrassment, with the shame. He would have never been right with God. Even if he was saved, it wouldn't have been right. Anybody that knew Peter, all of the other disciples that knew he denied him and bragged, would have been thinking, wow, I doubt Peter's even saved. You know, I know that is because I've been around enough Christians to start thinking, this person messed up. They must not, I don't want to talk bad about them, but I don't think they really know Jesus. You want to know what they did? So the question was calculated to hurt. When you hear the truth of God's word, sometimes it hurts. And if you got sin going on, it's supposed to hurt. It can cut like a knife. It's supposed to. Did you know that? We go, I don't want to hear this. I brought my friend today. I don't want them to hear this. I told them sometimes you're funny. Not very often, but sometimes. Good news with these questions. They were calculated to hurt, but the questions were also calculated to heal. I love that. Because we need that. This is Jesus. When Jesus is involved, it's not just about hurting. It's about a purpose. It's about surgery. It's about healing. I love this story. This author writes, my friend and mentor Dick Foth has been preaching for nearly 50 years, but something happened to him recently that never happened before. Right in the middle of a message, Dick sensed in his spirit that someone in the congregation was on the verge of an affair. That impression came out of nowhere, and what Dick did was out of character. He stopped preaching and he said, there is someone here who has set themselves up to have an affair. The pieces are in place, and you are planning on making the decision today. Don't do it. Then he picked his sermon back up right where he had left off, and after the service, a middle-aged man gave Dick a big bear hug. As they embraced, he whispered in Dick's ear, that was me. Thank you. This author goes on to say that quite possible that a family tree for generations was saved because of that one act. Hurts, heals, forgives, saves. So where's the healing in all of this? Because right now it's pretty hurtful for Peter. Notice when Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? Verses 15 and 16, he asked him, do you agape me? That's unconditional love. That's the highest of all love. That's the kind of love you need. If you're going to have a healthy marriage, you got to have unconditional love. Because quite frankly, how many of you are married? Have you ever had trouble in your marriage? Listen, it's okay to admit it. It's Father's Day. We can admit the truth now. Anybody in here? All right. You know, the Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians, it's better not to marry if you don't want to have any. If it does say that. Did you know that? The Bible actually says that. And then it goes on to say just a verse or two later, the reason why. Because if you are married, you will have trouble. I find that interesting. The Bible says it. So we got to have unconditional love, right? For each other. It's the highest of all loves. Peter doesn't respond with agape love. So Jesus says, do you love me with agape love? The highest of all loves? Peter responds, verse 15 and 16, I phileo love. I love you like a friend. Peter's saying, listen, I can't say that I agape you, Lord, because I've severely messed up. This is the worst barbecue of my life. Hopefully your barbecues will go better today. I'm trusting mine will. He says, you know I'm fond of you. If we were to put it in percentages, Peter's saying, Peter, do you love me with 100% love? On a good day, Lord, 60, 50? Right now, I ain't feeling any love. In fact, this is a drag. Peter has to be wondering, after all I've bragged about and then denied you, and here you are in front of me asking me these questions, there's no way that you can love me after what I've done, and I can't say, I just can't say it, Lord. I find this interesting also because in verse 17, Jesus asks him a third time, Simon, do you love me? Look at it again. Peter's grieved because he said it to him a third time, do you love me? And then he said to Jesus, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus says, feed my sheep. Why was Peter grieved so much the third time he's asked the question? What's interesting is this. When Jesus says in verse 17, do you love me? He uses Peter's word. Peter, do you love me like a friend? He's already said, do you agape me? Twice. Peter says, I love you as a friend. The third time, Do you really even love me that much, Peter? I promise you, this was the most unpleasant barbecue in the history of the world. The God of all things, standing in front of him, questioning him, his peers listening. How miserable could it be? Do you really care for me, Peter? So Peter says, you know all things. You know I love you as a friend. You know me better than anything. You know me better than I know myself. I'll admit it. I'm caught. This is where Peter needed to be. So Jesus, he begins, he says, feed my lambs, tend my sheep, and then feed my sheep. He's progressing. What he's doing with each one of those statements after each question, he's letting him know, I'm restoring you. I'm putting you back out there, and you're going to be awesome, Peter. You're going to take care of the lambs. You're going to take care of the baby Christians. You're going to take care of those who don't even know me. They're going to come to know. They're going to grow. You're going to be feeding my sheep. You're going to be tending Peter. The Lord had made Peter such a rock. He became one of the pillars of the church and wrote two books of the New Testament. But with that, let's wrap this up, all right, with some takeaways. The 3 takeaways, these are all short and simple and to the point. These takeaways are based on this, what we need to know when we have failed. Notice how I wrote in there, not if we failed. You all admitted when we first began, I asked you if you failed. All of you men pretty much said, yeah. And then all of you women laughed. And then you all admitted, yeah, I failed too. Listen, we've all failed, right? So it's not if we failed, what we need to know when we have failed. So the first takeaway is this, is one, it hurts when God starts to fix us. Have you noticed that? Have you ever been taken out behind the woodshed by the Lord? Whack! It is most unpleasant, is it not? Oh, it hurts. So, but let me ask you this. What's more merciful? A doctor, who notes, he has a patient, he says, you got cancer. Got the x-rays, got the blood tests, we got the MRI, we got everything. You've got cancer. There's treatment, but you're not getting any. See you later. Next. Or the doctor says, we've got the x-rays, we got the blood tests, we got the MRI, we've got everything. You've got cancer. I need to perform surgery now, and it's going to hurt. But I know it'll save your life if you let me do this. Which one's more merciful? It's not rocket science, right? So it hurts when God starts to fix us, but he's fixing us. He's doing the fixing. Understand this too. If you've blown it and you're thinking there's no hope for me, there cannot be a resurrection unless something dies. Right? If there's something inside of you that you're holding on to that needs to die, now's the day. You lay it down. Lord, I've got this thing. Kill it. Unless it dies, there ain't going to be no resurrection of new life. Unless it dies, there will be no resurrection of a spirit-filled life. And you can have something going on in your life, and you're thinking, I'm going to go on like Peter went back to his old way. You may have gone back to your old way in a whatever area, and you don't got the Holy Spirit-filled life. Doesn't mean God's left you. But certainly you've left him in that spot or this spot or whatever. Right? And he wants to fix us. But we've got to admit, Lord, I need you. If we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. If you do not confess your sin, you will suffer accordingly, according to the Bible. Wow. But if you're willing, man, he wants to do the fixing. I said earlier, you must be willing. We underestimate how much God loves us. We underestimate his ability to forgive us. Our biggest problem is us. And saying, here I am. Fix me. I'm done. Right? Number 2, God knows the worst about us and loves us anyway. I think this is good news. Verse 17, Peter says, man, you know everything there is anyways. You know more about me than I know about me. The Lord knows the worst about us and loves us anyway. I love this. This author writes, the last time I checked, the population clock ticked at 7,121,929,889. If you managed to line everybody up in a single file conga line, could you imagine that? It's the only dance I can do right. That and the chicken dance. That's it. If you managed to line everybody up in a single file conga line, it would reach 1,483,735 miles. That's long enough to circle the earth at the equator 59 times. Which reminds me of something I said to my one and only daughter, Summer, since she was a little girl. He said, if all the girls in the world were lined up and I could only choose one, I'd choose you. My terms of endearment take on even greater meaning when you consider the actual numbers. I might have to circle the earth quite a few times to find her. He continues, when you consider the vast number of people who inhabit this planet, it's easy to feel insignificant, but it should produce the opposite emotion. You aren't 1 in a million. You are 1 in 7 billion. Yet Jesus says, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside of your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. The amazing thing is that God cares about the most minute details of our life, and the things he cares most about us is the forgiveness of our sin and taking us and setting us up, rebuilding the foundation if we need it, making the concrete stronger if it needs to be. But all it requires is you to admit it and say, Lord, here I am. Help me. He'll do it. He'll do it. Don't underestimate his love, and don't underestimate his ability. He will do it if you want. Last, number 3, God knows the best about us even though others don't. That's good. I have no doubt that with the other disciples, that you look at Peter, and they're thinking, he denied the Lord. He threw us under the bus, and he said, oh, even if they deny you, I won't do it. I'm sure the other disciples saw Peter like, wow, this he's not a Christ follower. He has no hope. But Jesus saw Peter. He said, you are a rock, and he was going to make him into that rock he had called him to be. He cleaned him up, and he set him on solid ground. So he would become, as I mentioned, one of the great pillars of the church, one of the great men in the Bible, not because he was great, but because God was great. God is great not because there's nothing too big for him. God is great not just because there's nothing too small for him. God is great because there's no sin that's too great for him to forgive. And he looked at Peter. Peter, you blew it. But I love you more than the amount that you blew it. You can't blow it enough to make me stop loving you. Listen, I don't know where all of you are at, but this is what I really want for you guys. I want to see y'all have a great Father's Day. And that goes for ladies in here too. That you would have a great day. Because we have a heavenly Father who so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him won't perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into this world to condemn, but that through him you would be forgiven. I can assure you every person in this room has blown it. And I can also assure you, just because we are humanity, there are plenty of people in this room that are thinking, you know what, I want the help that Peter got. He wants to forgive you. He wants to strengthen you. He wants you to be awesome for him. And he'll do it. He wants you to be a great dad. He wants you to be a great mom. He wants to strengthen you. But you got to admit that you're a sinner. in need of forgiveness. He can't resurrect what doesn't die.